My name is Charles Dhewa. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of an organization called Knowledge Transfer Africa Private Limited. It's based in Zimbabwe. It's a social enterprise that works with farmers, traders, as well as mass markets, which we call territorial markets across Africa. And in a changing climate right now, we see that Africa cannot afford to continue depending on imports. Definitely the climate is changing, but Africa has diverse commodities, diverse food, and our young people are growing across the continent. We have unemployment issues, but we see opportunities in our food systems. If we value add our commodities creatively, we create room for our young people to participate in the agricultural sector. So really, My Food is African is timely in that sense, in that it's about African identity. We're already trying to build African identity, which is around food. So we think this is very important from a climate change perspective, from an identity perspective, and many other issues around social capital, development, and even socio-economic development in general. Many of our African farmers and communities, they produce their own food in an agroecological way without using external inputs. So in a changing climate, we see local communities depending on themselves for their inputs, for their food as well. And this has been proven during the COVID era, when local food was more important. People depended on local food because they realized that it is not enough to depend on food from elsewhere, and because of lockdowns. So it was an aha moment for us to say, after all, as Africans, we have a lot of food which is being produced without chemicals, in a way that can preserve the planet. So really, this is quite important, and it connects very well with our local markets, territorial markets, which are local markets where we see food that connects with our identity. And this can only be seen in a comparative sense. Food that we find in territorial markets cannot be found in other markets like supermarkets. Territorial markets are about diversity, which is really about African context. Every community has got its own food system, the way it's prepared, the way it's grown, including seasonality. So you see these in territorial markets, which is why we think it's very important. So territorial markets are an extension of agroecology in a very big way, because that's where we find food that is produced, which you cannot find anywhere else, even in the global markets. And we think this is very important because our young people are going to the diaspora now. So they are going to create a market for our food. So it's an opportunity to globalize African food, African cuisines. So this is really important. So we see territorial markets expanding beyond just local to go global. So this is really timely and very important. One of the most important things we're struggling with is to document our knowledge systems. Most of the knowledge about indigenous food or local food is with elders. It's more like African memory. It has not been written down. Young people who are growing up now, if we tell them that a mango is not indigenous food, they will not understand, because they grew up eating mango, they grew up eating imported food. So external food has been with Africa for a long time, to a point where we need to now convince our young people to say, no, yes, it's now part of our food, but we have our own indigenous food, which grows naturally, which really mimics our indigenous fruits, our indigenous chickens, and including small grains, which are really like our natural grasses. So it's a learning that we need to do to document our food systems and create departments that are responsible for indigenous food only. In every government, it's to be very important for every government to have a department that just focuses on indigenous food, with officers that wake up daily to just say, we are focusing on indigenous food, what is happening to it, how it's being infiltrated, how are we losing some of the genetics as well as biodiversity. So African governments, this is very important if we can do that. And if possible, let's pitch it at AU level, but starting with the African governments. This is very important. That's the only way how we can try to really elevate Africa as an economy that can produce its own feed and feed its own people. We can't continue depending on imports. Our import bill is quite big, and it's a shame, because we shouldn't really be happy about that. So really, it's an opportunity to use agroecology to address some of these challenges.